Applause began to echo through the hall, and Hila felt a wave of empowerment envelop her. She was finally free, not just from the betrayal, but from the insecurities that imprisoned her. Mason, on the other hand, found himself isolated, the disapproving stares of friends and family weighing on his shoulders. Hila ended her speech with a radiant smile. "Thank you all for being here. And remember, never let anyone tell you that you're not enough. Let's celebrate the freedom and strength that we all have within us." The applause became deafening, and Hila stepped away from the microphone, feeling lighter than ever. To the sound of the music that began to play, she started to dance, her movements full of grace and strength. Mason, in shock, watched as people approached her, offering support and congratulations. He realized, at that moment, that he had lost not just a girlfriend, but a woman who had found her true essence. Hila was radiant, surrounded by friends and new admirers, while Mason shrank into a corner, beginning to understand the consequences of his actions. She was free and victorious, dancing as if the world was hers, and it really was. Now that you've heard this surprising story, take a moment to reflect on your own experiences. Have you ever gone through situations where the truth behind an act seemed crueler than the act itself? What have these experiences taught you about trust and expectations? Remember, every challenge can teach us something valuable if we're willing to learn from it. Share your reflections and experiences in the comments. How do you deal with disappointments, and what have you learned from them? If you want to keep exploring more of these themes and not miss any of our stories and insights, be sure to click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. In my opinion, this is one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you liked the one you just heard, you'll definitely love this other story too. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds. "Hi, Jake. I didn't expect you to be in charge now either," she replied, trying to maintain her composure. The tension was palpable. Emily sat down, and the words began to flow, but there was an invisible barrier between them, something both seemed to feel. "You have an impressive resume. I've always been your fan, you know?" Jake said, breaking the ice a little, but his words sounded like a distant echo of a past she would rather forget. "Thank you. I worked hard to get here," Emily responded, looking him in the eye, trying to stay focused on the interview and not on the memories that haunted her. The conversation advanced between questions and answers about her professional experiences, but the chemistry between them was undeniable, a thread of tension pulsing in the air. "Do you remember that presentation we did together on digital marketing? I still have nightmares about that night," Jake said, trying to make a joke, but the smile on his face couldn't dispel the emotional weight of the memory. "Yes, it was quite an adventure, but we made it, didn't we? And we learned a lot from it," Emily responded, her tone a bit lighter, but her heart was still racing. The past and the present intertwined, and she found herself questioning whether it was possible to overcome the accumulated hurt. The interview continued, but the connection between them was like a silent battlefield, full of unresolved feelings. Emily knew she needed to stay focused, but Jake's presence made her feel a whirlwind of emotions she thought she had already buried. And so, as the words unfolded, she wondered if she was really ready to face what was to come. Jake watched as Emily walked away from the interview room, his heart torn between the joy of seeing her again and the pain of what they had lost. He had promised himself he would remain professional, but the memory of the happy moments they had shared together haunted him like a shadow. After a few moments, he decided he needed to talk to her. It was clear that there was still much left unsaid. "Emily, do you have a minute?" Jake called out, his voice a little hesitant, as he approached her standing near the window, looking out. She turned, surprised, but soon her face closed into a neutral expression. "Sure, Jake. What do you need?" The formality in her tone was palpable, and he felt a knot form in his stomach. Jake hesitated, recalling so many moments when their spontaneity flowed like a free river. "I wanted to talk about us, about what happened." He forced himself to keep his gaze steady, but he couldn't help but notice the tension in Emily's shoulders. "I'm not sure if that's a good idea," she replied, crossing her arms as if she wanted to protect herself from something. "We need to be professional, Jake." "I know, he said, trying to stay calm. But we can't just ignore what happened between us. We were important to each other. She sighed, her brown eyes shining with a mixture of emotions. We were, but we were also young and immature. Things have changed, and you know that. Yes, I know, but I still remember the good times, Jake insisted. The laughter, the late-night conversations, our trips. I miss that. He took a step forward, trying to connect with the more vulnerable part of Emily. I miss it too, she confessed, her voice softening a little. But the pain of the breakup is still there. You can't just erase it with good memories. So, what do you want? For us to just stay here, each on our own, without talking about what happened, without trying to understand? The frustration began to show in Jake's voice. That's not it, Emily replied, raising her voice. It's just that I don't know if I can trust you again. You hurt me, Jake. He lowered his head, absorbing her words, remembering how he had failed. I know I made mistakes, and I deeply regret it. I didn't want it to end like this. If I could go back in time, but I can't. I can only promise that I've changed. How can I believe you? She questioned, her gaze challenging, but there was a spark of doubt in her eyes that he couldn't ignore. Because I'm here, trying to make this work. I sought help, Emily. I learned about what I did wrong, and I want to be a better person. For you, for me. The sincerity in his voice was palpable, and he wondered if somehow she could feel it. Her expression softened, and Jake saw a glimpse of what used to be. And if I'm not ready for this, what if I can't forgive? Then we can take it slow, one step at a time. Just give me a chance, Jake pleaded, hope surging in his chest. Let's have coffee, talk as friends, no pressure. Emily hesitated, the inner conflict evident on her face. Coffee? She repeated, as if weighing the words. Do you think that will solve everything? No, but it could be a start, Jake responded, his heart beating faster. And if you don't want to continue, I promise to respect your decision. Just let me try. She took a deep breath, and Jake could see the struggle in her eyes. Finally, she nodded slowly. Okay, coffee. Great, he smiled, a mix of relief and anxiety. Let's do it tomorrow afternoon? The place we used to go to is still open. Yes, I remember, Emily said, a nostalgic tone in her voice. It was a good place. So it's settled. Tomorrow at 3, Jake confirmed, feeling that the next day could be a turning point. As they walked away, a new hope began to grow in both of their hearts, though the scars of the past remained visible. The possibility of a new beginning hung in the air, and even with the fear and uncertainty, something inside them seemed to vibrate with anticipation. Emily entered her home, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. The conversation with Jake still echoed in her mind, each word carrying a weight that made her question her own heart. She threw herself onto the couch, staring at the ceiling as the memories of the past danced before her. The shared laughter, the moments of intimacy, and, on the other hand, the hurt and misunderstandings that culminated in the breakup. Could she forgive him? The doubt consumed her. I don't know if I still love you, Jake, she murmured to herself, as if the walls of the room could offer an answer. The silence was deafening, and the memories haunted her, but a determination began to rise. She couldn't let herself be dominated by a relationship that had already caused so much pain. I need to focus on myself, she decided, standing up from the couch. The next morning, Emily arrived at the company with a new spirit. During the work meeting, her ideas flowed easily, as if a new energy was driving her. She presented an innovative project that captured the team's attention. As she spoke, she felt her confidence grow with every word. However, her mind couldn't stray from Jake, who watched her from afar, a proud smile on his lips. That was amazing, Emily, said a colleague, clapping at the end of the presentation. You really outdid yourself. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it, she replied, trying to ignore Jake's gaze that seemed to pierce her soul. She quickly looked away, but her heart skipped a beat when she realized he was truly admiring her growth. After the meeting, as people dispersed, Jake approached. He seemed hesitant, as if he were pondering the best way to address the situation. Emily, he began, I want to congratulate you on the presentation. You were fantastic. Thank you, Jake. It means a lot coming from you, she said, a mix of gratitude and discomfort in her tone. A silence hung between them, laden with unspoken feelings. Emily felt the warmth rise to her face, and for a moment, all they could do was exchange glances that said more than words could express. The tension was palpable, as if the environment around them had dissipated, leaving only the two of them. I wanted to talk more about our conversation at the coffee shop, Jake finally said, breaking the silence. I know we have a long way to go, but I feel we deserve a chance to understand each other better. Emily hesitated, the internal struggle intensifying. I also feel we have a lot to resolve, Jake, but I'm not sure if I'm ready for that right now. His expression changed, a mixture of understanding and frustration. I get it. I don't want to pressure you. I just want you to know that I'm here, willing to talk whenever you are. Thank you, she replied, feeling a little lighter. It's good to know you're willing to do that. Jake nodded, but his gaze still carried a desire that couldn't be ignored. They stood there in a moment of connection that seemed eternal, but was still shrouded in doubts and uncertainties. Emily felt the urge to reach out, to take his hand, but the voice of reason stopped her. Pride and the pain of the past were still very much alive. He slowly walked away, and Emily's gaze followed him until he disappeared through the door. Disappointment hit her, but she knew she needed to stay focused. With a deep sigh, she decided to concentrate on her work and on what she could do to become the best version of herself. Meanwhile, Jake watched from afar, reflecting on how everything had changed and on what could still be. He knew he needed to make an effort to win Emily back, but the journey wouldn't be easy. The wounds of the past were there, and he was determined to face them, even if it meant waiting. Emily walked down the company hallway, her heart pounding with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Since deciding to distance herself from Jake, focusing on her professional development, she felt like she was finally regaining control of her life. The past few months had been intense. Each meeting, each project completed, strengthened her. The feeling of being respected and valued in the workplace surrounded her, and she felt increasingly confident in her abilities. However, Jake's constant presence in her mind challenged her to stay fully focused. On one of the sunny afternoons, while reviewing a report, a colleague complimented her. "Emily, you really stood out in this presentation. I'm impressed with your innovative ideas." Joy filled her, but when she looked up, she saw Jake on the other side of the room, watching her with a smile that mixed pride and longing. His gaze made her stomach churn. It was a painful reminder of what they had been and what they could still be. Jake, on the other hand, tried to concentrate on work, but his mind wandered to Emily. He couldn't escape the thought that he had lost someone very special. His reflection was sharp. "What did I do wrong?" he murmured to himself, running his hand through his hair. "I should have valued more what we had." The days dragged on, and even surrounded by colleagues, loneliness accompanied him. He wondered if he could win her back, if there was still time to fix his past mistakes. The company party was approaching, and the invitation for Emily was received with a mix of excitement and hesitation. She wondered if she should go. The idea of meeting Jake again made her uneasy. "What if he tries to talk about us?" she thought as she looked in the mirror, assessing her reflection. At the same time, the prospect of seeing him, of feeling the tension and chemistry that had always existed between them, intrigued her. On the night of the party, the atmosphere was lit up and vibrant. Soft music filled the air, and laughter echoed through the halls. Upon entering, Emily was warmly greeted by old colleagues, but her attention quickly shifted to Jake, who was chatting animatedly with a group. He saw her, and for a brief moment, the world around her disappeared. His smile, the one that always made her feel special, appeared on his face. "Emily!" Jake exclaimed as he approached, his tone cheerful, but there was a layer of nervousness in his voice. "I'm so glad you came. I thought it would be good to see everyone again," Emily replied, trying to keep her composure. She felt her heart race. The tension between them was almost palpable. "You look amazing," Jake complimented sincerely, his gaze making her feel warmth rise to her face. "Everyone's talking about how you've excelled in the team. It's good to see you shining." "Thank you, Jake. I've been working hard," she said, a slight smile forming on her lips. There was something comforting in his presence, but at the same time, an avalanche of emotions overwhelmed her. As the party went on, the two talked about trivial matters, but the conversation soon deepened, as if an invisible bond was pulling them together. Jake, hesitant, finally asked the question that had been tormenting him. "Have you been thinking about us? About what happened?" Emily looked at the ground, taking a deep breath before answering. "It's hard not to think about it, Jake, but I need to focus on myself right now. I can't let old hurts get the better of me." "I understand," Jake said, the sadness evident in his voice, "but I want you to know that I'm here and that I'm willing to do whatever it takes to regain your trust." She lifted her eyes, meeting his with a mix of hope and doubt. "And if I don't know if I can trust you again?" Jake paused, his expression serious. "Then I'll be here to prove I've changed. I don't want you to feel pressured, but I can't hide what I feel for you either." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Both knew the conversation was far from over, but words didn't seem enough to capture the complexity of the feelings they shared. The past still haunted them, but the flame of hope seemed to be alight. As the party continued in the background, Emily felt like she was at a crossroads. She could choose to move on, or risk exploring what was new between them. The choice wouldn't be easy, and the future remained uncertain, but the truth was that deep down, she still cared about Jake. And that, in itself, was a sign that there might be a chance for something new. The party was in full swing, the lights flashing, and the music setting the tone. Emily felt a bit out of place at first, but as the people around her danced and laughed, she began to relax. However, her attention was entirely focused on Jake, who moved easily among the guests, always with a smile on his face. He seemed at ease, as if he had regained the confidence she knew so well. After some time, Emily decided to step away from the bar and found a quieter corner of the hall. There, the sound of the music was softer, allowing her thoughts to flow. That's when Jake found her, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. He approached, his expression a mix of surprise and joy. "Hi, Emily. I didn't think you'd come," Jake said, his tone carrying a sincerity that made her feel a flutter in her stomach. "Yeah, I hesitated, but I ended up deciding I needed to see how everything was," she replied, trying to keep the conversation light, even though the words felt heavy. "You look wonderful," he complimented, his gaze lingering for a moment on her face, as if trying to decipher what she was thinking. "Thank you, and you, well, still the same charm," Emily said, an involuntary smile forming on her lips. They exchanged glances, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Jake took a deep breath as if he were preparing to open his heart. "You know, I really miss how much fun we used to have together. Sometimes it feels like everything that happened between us was a nightmare." "I miss the good times too," Emily admitted, her gaze lost in a distant memory. "But, Jake, we can't ignore what happened. I can't just forget." "I understand, and I'm not asking you to forget, but I'd like the chance to make it up to you, to show that I've learned from my mistakes," he responded. The sincerity in his voice was palpable. "Learning from mistakes is important, but what if you make the same mistakes again? What if I get hurt again?" Emily questioned, her tone mixing vulnerability and strength. "I promise I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make sure that doesn't happen. I don't want to hurt you again," Jake said, his expression firm and determined. At that moment, something unexpected happened. One of the waiters, distracted, bumped into a group of guests, causing a tray of drinks to slip from his hand and crash to the floor. The noise caught everyone's attention, and a wave of laughter and surprised cries echoed through the hall. Emily, on impulse, turned to look, and in doing so, bumped into Jake, almost losing her balance. "Careful," Jake exclaimed, holding her by the waist to keep her from falling. They exchanged glances, and the laughter around them only increased the tension. "It seems like we're always in embarrassing situations together," he said, letting out a nervous laugh. "It's true. Who would have thought our story would be marked by so many accidents?" Emily replied, the mood between them becoming lighter. "Let's make a toast to our crazy stories," Jake suggested, picking up a glass of drink nearby. "To crazy stories, and who knows, new beginnings," Emily agreed, raising her glass and getting lost in his eyes for a moment. After the toast, they continued talking, and the tension that had once enveloped them began to dissipate. The smiles returned, and a feeling of lightness took over the environment. Emily realized that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a way to reconcile. When the party began to wind down, Jake turned to her, his gaze serious again. Emily, I know our lives have changed, and the past can't be erased, but please, give me a chance to show that I can be the man you always deserved. She hesitated, her heart racing. Jake, I don't know. It's all so confusing, but I'm willing to talk more. No promises, just a date to see where we are now. You have no idea how much that means to me, Jake replied, a hopeful smile lighting up his face. So, let's do this. A date, just the two of us. As they walked away from the party, the uncertainty still hung in the air, but there was also a new hope. The path ahead was still unknown, but Emily felt ready to face it, one step at a time. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting a soft golden light over the park. Emily arrived a little before Jake, her heart pounding with anticipation and anxiety. The place was filled with people, but for her, everything seemed to boil down to this meeting. When she saw him approaching, a mix of emotions flooded her. Jake looked more mature, with a seriousness that hadn't been there before. He greeted her with a nervous yet comforting smile. Hi, Emily. You look beautiful, he said, his eyes shining with sincerity. Thank you, Jake. You look good too. How have you been? She replied, trying to keep the conversation light, but feeling the weight of unspoken words hanging between them. I've been reflecting a lot on everything, on us, Jake began, looking at the ground for a moment before meeting her eyes again. Since the breakup, I've sought professional help. I needed to understand where I went wrong and how I could become a better person. Emily's heart tightened. She hadn't expected such a deep revelation. That's good to hear. It's hard, but important. I also went through a process of self-discovery. The breakup made me realize a lot about myself, she replied as they sat on a bench under a lush tree. I'm so sorry for what happened. I wish I had acted differently, Jake said. The sincerity in his voice was palpable. I didn't realize how much I hurt you until I lost you. Emily took a deep breath, remembering the pain she had felt. I felt betrayed, Jake. Not just by the breakup, but because you didn't seem to care about what I was going through. I felt like I was just a part of your life, not the priority I should have been. I understand, and I wish I had done more. I realized that our relationship was a reflection of my insecurities and selfishness. I don't want you to feel that way again, he said, his voice choked with emotion. She looked at him, contemplating the sincerity in his words. It's hard for me to trust again. I don't know if I can just forget all that and go back to who we were. I don't expect you to forget. I'd just like you to consider the possibility of a new beginning. I've really changed, Emily, and I want to prove that to you, Jake replied, his voice filled with hope. Silence took over for a few moments, but it was a different kind of silence, one filled with understanding. Emily felt a warmth forming inside her. It was as if somehow the barriers surrounding her heart were beginning to dissolve. I also feel like I've changed. The breakup made me realize what I really want in life and in love, she confessed, her gaze fixed on the horizon. And although it was painful, it made me stronger. Jake watched her closely, absorbing every word. Then, if we can give ourselves a chance, even a small one, I'd like to try. I don't want our past to define our future. Emily looked at him, their eyes meeting in a moment of clarity. Maybe it's time to leave the past behind, but we need to be honest with each other. I want to build something solid this time. She saw a smile form on Jake's face, a genuine smile that warmed her heart. That's all I ask, honesty and a chance to rebuild what we lost. And at that moment, the tension that had been between them dissipated. Jake leaned in slightly, and Emily did the same. Their lips met in a gentle kiss that spoke more than words could express. It was a kiss that sealed promises of a renewed future, of a love that transcended the hurts of the past. When they pulled apart, they were both smiling. The world around them continued its course, but for them, everything seemed new and full of possibilities. Let's take it one step at a time, okay? Emily suggested, her heart now lighter. Definitely. One day at a time, Jake agreed, holding her hand gently. I'm willing to make this work. And so, under the soft light of the twilight, they decided to allow themselves a new chapter, where the wounds of the past could be healed and love could finally blossom again. Now that you've experienced this surprising twist, ask yourself, how many times have you felt that you were being blocked by fate, not knowing that these barriers could actually be stepping stones to something better. The story of the CEO and the ex-boyfriend is a powerful reminder that difficulties may hide opportunities in disguise. So the next time you find yourself in a puzzling situation, remember that it could be the beginning of a new journey. How can you turn your own adversities into chances for growth? Share your opinion in the comments and tell us how you've overcome similar challenges. And click on the video that's appearing on your screen now. This is, in my opinion, one of the best stories I've ever told. And if you liked what you just heard, you'll definitely enjoy this other story as well. So subscribe to the channel, click on the video on your screen now, and I'll see you in a few seconds.